Hi everyone, and welcome to another installment of Collector Car Stories on the Collector Car Canada podcast. Today we have with us Corey Finkelstein. Corey is a rep with Zehr Insurance, and I'll let him introduce himself. Over to you, Corey.
Thank you so much. So yes, I work for Zehr Insurance. I'm the manager of the Classic Car program, and it's really dedicated to insuring collector cars aged 15 years to 20 years and older. Very good pricing, no penalty for modified vehicles, and we're open for business and want lots of cars, and we've got good rates.
So at Zehr, you touched on this, but I think it's worth reinforcing, Corey, because from time to time I hear from collector car people who drive modified cars, not often, but as their Sunday driver or something like that, and sometimes they struggle getting insurance. Is that something you can help with?
Absolutely. So we have our underwriting guidelines that specify what types of cars we take, but one of the things that we take right-hand drive JDM cars, and we also take cars with roll cages, and so Pro Street and cars that are set up to be like drag racing cars, but we have to make sure that the customers aren't going on the track with them.
Sure.
And it's only for historical purposes.
I see. So I'm surmising then that you get to hang around these cars all day, every day, do you?
Being that my job is about collector cars and I'm very passionate about collector cars, I'm very lucky to spend 24/7 thinking about, working on, enjoying, being part of the hobby, everything to do with collector cars, going to shows, chit-chatting with people about cars, pretty much everything, yeah. So
yeah, I think our audience is now getting a sense of why we invited you here today, Corey. So that sounds really great. So is there anything you want to tell us further about your work at Zehr, or about your more structured sort of activity in the hobby?
Yeah, sure. So, as far as Zehr goes, it's an interesting position, newer position for me, coming from another insurance company.
We'll make sure to get the contact information for Zehr onto the podcast. So go ahead.
So just a quick history. So always been a car guy and ran my own creative boutique marketing agency for 25 years and started a car show, having no idea how to run car shows back in 2006 in Creemore. Ran it for 10 years and amassed quite a following. We were pulling in about 700 cars in the show every year for the little town of Creemore.
There aren't many more than 700 people in Creemore, are there?
Exactly.
I guess there are more than that, but 700 is quite a showing.
Yeah, so we'd bring about 10,000 spectators for a one-day show in Creemore, tied in with the brewery festival for a few of the years until we sort of outgrew the brewery festival and ran our own program. And from there, I got an opportunity through a sponsorship from an insurance company to take a position, to interview and get a position as the private client services manager for a collector car insurance company. And that's where I kind of got interested and learned about insurance. Never thought of myself as being an insurance guy, but it's quite an interesting field. And what I liked about it was I couldn't see myself owning a restoration shop or being a car salesperson in the hobby. I didn't want to burn myself out. So the nice thing about being in insurance is I get to be around the cars, but not actually get sick of the hobby.
Right.
I get to enjoy it from a different perspective.
You gave a little bit of structure there about that Creemore show. I know a little bit about that. Are there any other structured activities you're part of and might want to promote today?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a huge supporter and fanatic of Targa, Newfoundland.
Right.
And Targa, it's really interesting because Targa is a fantastic event. It was always on my bucket list, but it was something that to me it was almost like an unobtainium. Like, how am I going to get to Newfoundland, and how am I going to do the race, and all the logistics, getting a car, all that stuff.
How would you summarize the event in 20 or 30 seconds for the audience?
It is an absolute blast. Incredible people, incredible roads, incredible views, and it's so exhilarating. It's one of the best experiences you could ever do. Whether you're a professional race car driver or you're just looking for a driving adventure, because there's different classes at Targa, it's an event that you have to do.
So about a 7-day event, and people make a trip out to Newfoundland?
Yeah, so in total for the full Targa, it's 8 days, and that includes 2 days of classroom training. So a day of familiarization with how to drive in a Targa, and then a day of reviewing all the different routes that you're going to go through. So it's about 2,000 kilometers over 6 days of driving. And in between those 2,000 kilometers are stages. For each day is called a leg, and there's stages within the leg. And so you're, it might be a 2 kilometer or a 10 kilometer run or sprint that you're going at high speed, disobeying all the speed limits that are posted.
Are the roads closed?
Roads are closed, yeah.
Right, okay.
What did it for me when I did Targa in 2018 was I'm driving through this little village in Newfoundland, this fishing village, and I see the road sign. It says 30 kilometers an hour, and I look down at my speedometer. I'm doing 130 past that sign.
Wow.
And you never get a chance to do that without going straight to jail. Right?
This is an insurance guy telling us this,
exactly.
everyone. The roads better have been closed.
Absolutely, yeah. So safety is paramount for this event. Vehicle has to be in good
Well, they
shape.
take it pretty seriously if you sit down in the classroom for 2 days.
Yeah.
I guess everyone's sort of starting from the same.
And some of the best advice is when you're driving Targa, you stay on the yellow line. You straddle the yellow line.
Okay.
And so when you're on a racetrack, you tend to want to apex the corners and drive the best line you can for the track. The problem with doing that in Targa is you don't know if that apex, a big chunk of concrete or cement or asphalt is missing
Might be
out
loose.
of that corner or loose, or there's gravel. So as long as you can see either side, you can deviate to right to left depending on when you need to, but as long as you're in the middle, you always have the best chance of escaping harm with your car and yourself.
I suppose during the event in September, just after Labor Day, I think it is, that's some of the best weather conditions in Newfoundland. Whereas if you were to go 5 or 6 months later, you wouldn't get quite the same road conditions, which eats up the pavement, as you say.
Yeah. When you say best, I think you get the best chance of all seasons in 1 week. So,
That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
The old, if you don't like the weather, wait 15 minutes.
exactly. Yeah.
And I know a little bit from having attended an event here at the garage back in February, where I got the thrill of not only meeting you, Corey, we'd met before that day, of course, but I got the thrill of meeting Randy Popst, a well-known race driver who's also a big advocate for Targa, Newfoundland. So tell us about your role in promoting Targa Newfoundland, if you would, please.
Yeah, sure. So I did Targa first time in 2018. I did the Bambina, which was at the time a 3-day event. Now it's a 2-day plus the 2 days of training. And kind of fell in love with it, as I said, and I wanted to get involved with Targa, especially there were some hard times through COVID where the event shut down. And so I kept bugging the organizers, said, let me come on the committee and let me help use some of my skills and expertise. I've got a background in marketing and advertising and social media. And in 2023, that happened. So I got in March of 2023, I joined. I rekindled the website. I got the social media channels unlocked because people.
Of course, with your background, you're a perfect fit for the job. Yeah.
So just tried to get Targa back in the spotlight and just put a spin on it that showed what a great event it was, and from my perspective and from professional driving perspectives. And we pulled the event off in 2023. We didn't have the same number of participants that they used to have back in the early 2000s, but it's a growing event again. And back at it again this year. And
well, it would have missed, 3 runnings from 20 to 5 runnings.
Yeah, 5.
So you're starting not quite from scratch, but with
it was a big undertaking.
I'm sure,
to get it back. And it's
a big accomplishment just for it to run last year, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. And huge from a logistic perspective. Like it's a really well-run event. Lots of volunteers, really highly organized, and everyone's trying to make it the best time possible for everybody,
Sure.
for all the participants, for all the volunteers, for the crew.
And you get the opportunity, having visited Newfoundland myself, both from St. John's to what is called the West Coast. I always get a kick out of Newfoundlanders talking about the West Coast, because there is a West Coast of the island of Newfoundland.
Yes.
But having visited both, I've managed to meet some very hospitable people in Newfoundland. Do you get a chance to mix with the locals, and what are they like?
Yeah, so one of the best parts of Targa is every lunch is catered by a local community group, whether it's the Legion or one of the service clubs. And you have your mix of fish, you have chili, you have like some local flavored food, and it's not gourmet because, let's face it, we're in the middle of Newfoundland, in the middle of nowhere.
Sure.
But for racetrack food, if you were compare it to like most sports kiosk, it's fantastic food. So
I bet that the day's lunch at the various outposts you visit for lunch That's a big event for them. For some, maybe even the highlight of their year.
Yeah, I mean, more tourists coming through at that moment than maybe all year. And
Sure.
people are so generous and so happy to talk to you and so interested in what we're doing.
And you have to drive after lunch?
Yes.
It must be hard to tear yourself away.
Yeah, and it's hard to get from the sleepy time back into the car. But the adrenaline starts pumping as soon as you put your helmet on and your gloves on and you're back in the car. It's
time to
right
go.
Back to work and you're all over again.
Sure. Well, that's a good summary of Targa. Same as for Zehr. We'll overlay some information about Targa in case people want to look further into it. It really sounds like a neat event. In my position, I don't know if I can get away quite for 10 days in September, but it's something that's on my bucket list, I'll say.
If you haven't been to Newfoundland before, this is a great way to see it.
Well, I think my having visited Newfoundland before is an even greater enticement to go, because I can just imagine what the camaraderie is like for this event.
Yes.
Because it's sort of an opportunity for the province to really shine and show its best colors. Okay, and how about the hobby outside of Zehr and outside of Targa? What do you do through the driving season in terms of the hobby? You ever have fun with cars before you get to Targa, Newfoundland in September?
Yeah, it's good to ask. So I certainly am addicted to classic cars. So the first classic car I've owned, I bought in 1990, as I said before, when I was in university.
They're about to find out why I wanted to sit in front of this thing, aren't they? Go ahead.
1964 Volkswagen Beetle.
So you've had that since, you said 1990?
Yeah, 34 years.
So 34 years, wow. My first collector car, I'll have had 20 years in a couple of weeks. Many years ago, I met a man in his late 60s who'd had a MG, I can't remember if it's a TC or a TD, but one or the other, and he'd had it 50 years.
Wow.
That made a real impression on me. I don't know if I have 30 years left, but I'm trying to keep that car for 50. You've got a better chance. But tell us about this 64.
So I was in university and I wanted a classic car, and I knew nothing about car. Like, I knew how to drive and enjoy a car. I didn't know how to fix a car or.
Did you have a daily driver at the time?
Yeah. So my daily driver was a 1987 Honda Civic 1500S.
Oh, that's a pretty nice car for 1990. Yeah.
So that was my car that I
last year before redesign in '88, as I recall, in the Civics.
bought it brand new in '87, and
oh wow, good for you.
But yeah, so I enjoyed that, and so because I didn't know what I was doing, there's a Beetle shop or bug shop in Niagara Falls. This guy John from John's Bug Shop, who's still around working on Beetles.
Oh, he is. Wow.
I went and told him, I said, I'm going to buy this Super Beetle, and he said, that's a piece of garbage. Don't buy that car. Go and see.
That would be a later Beetle if it's a Super Beetle.
70s.
Yeah.
Beetle, 70s,
yeah.
76, 70. I can't remember now, but what year it was exactly.
But after 64.
Oh yeah. So
yeah.
He said, go see this farmer in Port Colborne and buy this particular bug, the one I have today. So
okay.
He's the one who told me, and he said, I'll get it all going for you. And so when I bought it, it was red with gray primer fenders.
That's two-tone.
Yeah, it wasn't intentional, but underneath the sea blue was poking out the original color.
Oh yeah.
Back then patina wasn't a thing, and I wanted a car that looked like it came out of the factory.
Well, patina was a thing, but it was blasphemous in those days.
Yeah, it wasn't a cool thing back then. Or
right.
Maybe it wasn't. I just didn't know. So I stripped it down after university and painted it 1984 Audi Emerald Metallic Green.
Okay.
And I had that color till about 98, and I started to see a lot of cars with that color. I said, no, I can't do that.
It was kind of a trendy color there from the late 80s, early 90s.
I didn't realize. It looked amazing on the car because it had these blue and green hues, depending on the curves of the car.
By coincidence, I just saw an 8 or 10-year-old S8 with a wrap in that color.
Yeah.
It was really interesting to see.
I know Mercedes released that color at the auto show a few years ago.
Okay.
Some of their, on the SUVs and stuff. So the color keeps hanging around. But in '98, I realized the floors need to be fixed and a bunch of other problems. So pulled it off the road again, fully stripped it down, body off restoration between '98 and '01.
And this was your project or back to Port Colborne?
My project. I did all the stripping and dismantling, and then I sent it to a body shop in Bowmanville.
Oh yeah.
A body person. It wasn't a shop, but
yeah.
And he did a
good
nice
rates,
job.
I bet.
Yeah,
at the body person instead of the body shop.
Yeah, and he did a nice job, lead filler everywhere, and he took good care of the car. Wasn't the best painter, so the paint job wasn't the best, but it was what I could afford at the time, and the car stood out. So it's blue and tan, two-tone, And so original Volkswagen.
So the same
colors.
way I see it today.
Yeah, as you see.
I most recently saw it. Was it at the Ancaster British show? I saw it. I saw it fairly recently in Ancaster.
Oh, you saw it at the Roadrunner swap meet.
Roadrunner swap meet.
In the
Yeah,
rain.
right. That's
Not
right.
afraid to drive it in the rain.
Did you have water skis on the roof rack that day?
Not that day, but I have in the past. Yeah, I should have. So yeah, the car has been been around, and I've enjoyed it. I went out to Calgary a couple of years ago. My friend owns a VW shop called Concept One VWs, and he invited me to come for a week to build a transmission up for my car. He said, "I want to teach you how to build a transmission." So I found 2 swing axle transmissions in a field in near Blue Mountain that were just sitting there rotting away. I strapped them onto a pallet and shipped them to Calgary. And ahead of my visit, when I got there, we broke them apart. He showed me how to take a transmission apart, how to inspect all the gears. Those cases were pretty rotten, so he gave me a case that was a 62. My car's a 64. He gave me a 62 case. We honed out the flywheel. We honed out the bell housing for the flywheel, so it would spin a 12-volt flywheel, and put in that 412 gear ratio. So it was running. Now it's running gears that are similar to a 70s Beetle because I have a 74 style engine in the car. So the transmission that came with the car was geared for a 1200, a 1.2 liter.
1200, eh?
Yeah. So now it's geared better on the highway. Revs a little bit lower and a little more fuel efficient.
Fuel economy,
Yeah.
sure.
And lots of power. Like it's driving a slow car fast on the highway is
It's a lot more exhilarating than driving a fast car slow, isn't it?
Yeah. Taking on driving adventures. So as you said, what do I do on my pastime? I like to cruise. So I'm not a huge car show guy, although I attend a lot of car shows. For me, it's all about driving. So any driving event I can get involved in. This Saturday, June the 8th, just so you have the date reference, is the German Air Show, and I sponsor.
Oh, right.
I
Heard about that one.
Cruise and starting at Fireman's Park in Niagara Falls.
Good.
The car show's the next day, but for me, the cruise is where it's at.
Sure.
As opposed to the show.
Sure. So that's Saturday, June 8th, 2024. This episode will not air until a few days after that, but there's probably a website people could look at for shots of both the cruise and the show the next day.
And then on the next day after that, I'm going on what's called the Petite Grand Tour. It starts in Kitchener, and it's a friend of mine who does another lovely driving event. And so it's a variety of cars going out for a cruise and ending with a nice lunch.
And is that German car specific?
No, it's all marks.
All
so
marks.
You'll have modern cars and classics.
Knowing that the former name of Kitchener is Berlin, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a big German settlement. I do notice there are a lot of German car events based in Kitchener.
Yes.
I might add that our business, Collector Car Canada, advertises with the Mercedes-Benz Car Club Canada. I shouldn't have said that the president's going to wring my neck. Mercedes-Benz Club Canada. We advertise with that club. And despite having Canada as its constituency, it is based in Kitchener, another German mark. So that's kind of neat.
Club.
It is a great club. Good group of people in that club. All right, so we know a bit about your Beetle now. I knew a little bit about before. Now I feel like I know more. I might add that Calgary mechanic, he's one to hold on to, because I think most mechanics charge more if you watch, and even more if you try to help out.
Yeah, that's right.
So that was a good find to have that mechanic.
Well, what was great about that was Ken has a very substantial collection of classic cars.
Right.
Near a small airport outside of Calgary, and so part of it was going and spending some time in the shop, and we went and drove some of his classic cars as well.
Oh,
there's
wow.
Some oddballs, and there's a substantial number of 911s and 356s, and
both air cooled.
Yeah, so he only goes up to the long hood 911.
Okay.
That's where he stops.
72 or 3.
Yeah, anything prior to that, anything newer to that, he doesn't have in his collection.
Yeah, I know a friend from the Porsche Club of America Upper Canada region who's of the mind that Porsche stopped making cars in 1973.
Yeah. We took a Schwimmigan out to A&W drive-through, which was
fun.
And it was starting to get cold. It was October in Alberta and
Yeah.
Calgary, so we had our toques on, and obviously there's no
Praying for a Chinook.
Yeah, exactly. So that was pretty cool. But so in my collection, I'm not a big car collector, and in fact, I find it really interesting to to spend most of your time on one car.
Okay.
Because you can really enjoy it and get the most out of it. Whereas, if you're splitting your time between cars, it gets a little more challenging.
It does, yeah.
And which car do you pick, which day, which ones work? It's nice when you have one broken down and you have a spare or something like that. But so in my garage, I have a 51 Ford F1 that I'm restoring. It's a long-term restoration. It's getting close to the end, so I'm hoping to get it out on the road this summer.
And how long you had that one, Corey?
I started the restoration in 2014.
Okay, and you're the general contractor for that restoration?
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
and had you ever owned a truck before?
No, and nothing really water-cooled like that, too. So it's got the original flathead V8 in it, 6-bolt, 3 on the tree, very stock. I even did some research, and I realized that white rubber was not very prevalent back in '51. It was hard to get. So most trucks that came out of the factory at that time came with black walls, not white walls.
Okay.
So I restored that truck to have the black walls instead of white.
Oh, wow.
It looks quite pretty with the white walls, but that's
I think of it as a white wall truck,
that's not correct necessarily.
Sure.
Someone might debate that, which is fine, but that's the research that I've come up with.
I try to make a habit of not telling people what to do with their cars.
There you go. And then I mistakenly bought a 70...
I've made some of these mistakes.
78 Jaguar XJ6.
It's a 70. I know about that car. It's a 78. Is it okay?
And
so is that a Series 2?
Series 2, yeah. The mistake wasn't buying it. The mistake was buying that particular one because it's pretty rough. And I bought it sight unseen. I had a friend look at it, and he did a poor job of inspecting, which is fine. No harm done, no foul. I have the car, so I have some plans to resto mod it and
really?
Turn it into
So is it 350 heading in there into that engine bay?
What I'd like to do is put an LS style motor in there. I'll probably pick up a used Chevy truck motor and put it in there and have some fun with it. I'd like to convert it to manual as well.
I better be careful what I say because we also advertise with the Ontario Jaguar Owners Association, and I am a Jaguar owner myself. I own an XJ6, but a little later an XJ40 from 1988, and yes, there are some purists in that club, and it's not an uncommon thing to find a GM. I say 350. You're talking about an LS engine. I think more so in XJSs, but within the club, it's not
I'm
a well-loved
strong
mod.
Supporter and member of the club as well, and I know that's it's not the thing, but this car, I'm not taking a car out of the market. That I'll still have the straight six, and I'll keep it on a bench and restore it, and always be able to put it back. But
maybe we should add, Corey, that the longtime president of the club's daily driver is a Tesla. So I guess we can do whatever we like as members of that club.
Yes.
So we've got an F1, we've got a 64 Beetle, and we've got the 78 Jag.
Yeah, I've owned lots of classics over the years. They've come and gone, and flipped a few cars here and there. But the Beetle's really the main one. The truck will probably get sold once it's done. Just 'cause it's not really my flavor. It's a beautiful truck and wonderful to drive and all that. But again, I like keeping focused, and so
and well sought after. I don't think you'll have much trouble selling that truck. Yeah, people look for those.
It's a full nut and bolt restoration.
Yeah.
Body off and all that.
Neat.
So,
Neat. Yeah. Okay, and any car friends you want to tell us about that stand out, or people in the hobby?
Well, I met a lot of interesting people along the way and who've become friends, and it's kind of interesting how you pick your friends by their cars and their involvement in the hobby. And I met a bunch of guys participating in an event called the Classic Car Adventure, the Maple Meeting.
Right. Dave Horde.
Dave Horde's event, yeah.
I must have told you this, but Dave Horde is one of the first customers of our business, Collector Car Canada.
Right.
In the first year, we sold more than just cars. He bought a set of Porsche rims from us. So it was neat to put two and two together when I realized who he was.
So
Go ahead.
I've done a few of Dave's events. We did a drive.
I might add that I think he bought those Porsche rims for a Beetle.
Yes, he did. That's right. Yeah, I did a driving event with him on Vancouver Island. I did his event in Colorado called the Silver Summit, and then I've done the Maple Melee a few times. And so
Maple Melee in Ontario.
In Ontario, that's
yeah.
right. Yeah. So from the Maple Melee, we created a signal group on your phone signal group. We call it the drivers meeting.
Signal the app.
Yeah, Signal app,
right.
That's right. And we call it the drivers meeting. So it's a bunch of us that all met at the Maple Melee that still talk, and that we now 4 or 5 years into our friendship.
Really
and we
neat.
get together for different driving events, and everybody's got a different car. And
I have a feeling I know some other people on that Signal chat group.
oh, you probably do.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then
Fun.
so there's that, and then I've got a close friend that I met actually at my show in Creemore, the Creemore Valley Classics. At the time my wife owned a toy store on the main street, and he came in with his kids, and he said, "Who owns that Beetle?" He was pretty excited about it, and he owns a Skoda.
Oh, right. I know what you're
1980
talking
Skoda,
about.
Yeah. So him and I do.
He doesn't live up in Creemore, does he?
He's in Angus. Yeah.
Okay.
So Tom from Skodalicious
Right.
is his Instagram handle.
It is a good handle.
Yeah. So he's him and I do. We were co-drivers in Targa. We've done all kinds of adventures. So
That's Targa 23, I guess.
Targa 23.
Yeah.
And this past weekend, we both have vintage trailers that we pull behind our classic cars.
Right.
So he's got a 1980s era Soviet Union camper trailer. It's
Okay.
a clamshell with cosmonaut colors, so orange and blue for the canopy for the tent.
Wow.
And then I've got a 1959 single wheel trailer, a Highlight travel trailer.
Single wheel
Single wheel, so one caster in the back and 2 1-inch hitch balls on the bumper of the Beetle.
of the Beetle. Okay.
We took them to a VW
And how
show.
far apart are those balls on the Beetle?
They are
approximately.
You know the overriders on the bumpers?
Sure.
They just sit outside of the overriders.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so
So you got a good stable tripod, effectively.
yeah, the trailer is 4x6 basically.
Okay,
Is the
okay.
footprint. So the tongues are just tucked in a little bit from the 4-foot side. So really stable. The suspension on it's brilliant. So it's got a shock absorber, and that's got a pneumatic suspension, sort of a rubber pneumatic suspension. And it just pulls along, it bounces up, it hops up and down over potholes and stuff. But
They don't build them like they used to, do they?
it's got original, no they don't, 1959 original canvas, and it takes about
Wow.
a minute to set it up. You just unsnap the cover and you fold it open.
I thought that was going to be the 0 to 60 time.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, Tom and I will set up at a car show because it's so nice to be able to have that little space to hang out in.
Well, I have spotted the two of you. I don't know if I saw the two of you the day, but I remember seeing certainly the Skoda at Concours de Lemons up in
Yes.
Owen Sound the day preceding the Cobble Beach show
that's
in
right.
September.
It's a Concours de Lemons winner.
Right.
Yeah,
Which one is?
the Skoda.
It is, eh?
Skoda is a
Neat,
winner, yeah,
neat.
'cause it's Eastern European.
Yeah. And I think Tom's involved in Targa, is he not?
Yeah, so Tom and
Right.
I do Targa together, and he's sort of an IT support person, but
Okay.
also he's very good at the marketing. So he's doing a lot of video work for us, streaming video promotional stuff together. He's a big part of the organizing committee. And
Here's a question we often end off with, and in all of your travels. So you said you bought that Beetle in 1990. So you've been an embedded part of the car culture for going on 35 years.
yeah.
Tell us one of your favorite crazy stories from the car culture.
All right,
Please.
I've got a story that you probably haven't heard before. Many people will know this, but I think it was 2019. I was at Pebble Beach for the Concours, and so it's also the Monterey Auction Week. And so while I was there, I tried to get to pretty much all the auctions that I could. And so one of the highlights is RM Sotheby's auction. And that particular year, there was a car that was discovered. It was early. I don't know if you call it a prototype, but it was billed as the first Porsche ever.
So that'd be about 46, right after the war?
I think earlier, actually.
Before, pre-war.
Pre-war,
Right,
yeah,
pre-war,
pre-war.
okay.
Yeah, it was pre-war. It was 19. I forget what year, 30 something.
Okay.
But it's debatable whether it was a Porsche or someone put the Porsche letters were added later, so
Okay.
on the hood. But really interesting.
You're going to use the word allegedly in this story too, aren't you?
Maybe. So I think there was the story goes, if I remember correctly, there was 2 or 3 of them built, hand beaten panels, aluminum. The driving position was really interesting because the driver was set ahead of the passenger in the car, and it's really streamlined aerodynamic car. And so and of course they were destroyed. The other 2 were destroyed in the war, like they were burnt or smashed, whatever. But this one was saved somehow.
And it was this being promoted by one of the auction houses?
Yeah, so this was at auction at Sotheby's, and nobody really knew what's the value. Is this a Porsche? What's it worth? So it goes up, it's on the stage and the bidding starts, and the auctioneer has a bit of an accent, not crazy, and he's a great auctioneer and done many auctions, but there was some confusion between the number on the screen and what he was saying. So, they're going through the bidding, and he's saying, 7 million, going up in numbers, and then when he's saying 17 million, and no, that's a high number. People think he's saying 70 million.
Okay, 1-7 versus 7-0.
7-0, yeah. So, and it's interesting because on the board it's got the right number, but what he's saying, and people are starting to get confused, and so everyone's thinking all of a sudden like this could become the most expensive car at auction ever, at a public auction. Because who knew would it stop? Would it go to 70 million?
So you're sitting there in the stands watching this.
I'm in the audience, and the room is electric right now.
Aghast.
Freaking out.
Corey, thanks for telling us about that anticlimax. That would have really been deflating and discouraging for some of the people who went to that auction. And at an auction like that, it's pretty well-heeled individuals at Monterey for the week.
Yeah, it certainly destabilized the credibility of RM a little bit. I mean, certainly it's a great company and they're going really well, but I think at that time people were just frustrated that something like that could happen. But
I guess things like that can happen. It's like a children's game of telephone, though. That lesson keeps getting learned in real life.
That's right.
But a company certainly with its roots in Ontario, as some of our viewers would know. But so what we'll do is, it's a Type 64, I think we found it is, and from 1939, so we'll superimpose an image of that when you're telling the story. But I think we're about to wrap up for today. Corey, I wanted to thank you again for coming to see us. You had some great stories. I'm really glad you came. And I think the audience will like them and share them and will subscribe. So thank you for watching, and thanks again to Corey Finkelstein of Zehr Insurance.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Corey.